This is Dave McCain with the Right Tree Genealogy. I'm doing another DNA topic. This time it is a comparison of two siblings with ethnicity estimates. Let's get into the video. DNA topic, ethnicity estimates. Comparing siblings? Really? Are they different? And a disclaimer, these are my opinions and you should research the topic yourself as well. Let's look at a few real examples of ethnicity estimates from Ancestry.com to understand the sibling comparison. These results are from my personal Ancestry account, are being used for clarification of this discussion. Looking on this page, Ancestry represents my father in 6 regions with a given percentage of his DNA matching in each region. And you can see Scotland, England, Northwestern Europe, Ireland, Wales, Sweden and Denmark, and Norway. So this is my father's results going from 25% down to 4%. His sister by 4 regions, not 6. 48% in Scotland, 40% in England and Northwestern Europe, 8% Ireland, and 4% Wales. They're definitely different on this. Now, just looking at one, as I said in the past, my father has a range in Ancestry.com, and again, this is from Ancestry. This is how Ancestry gives you a range that you could fall within, and important to look at as you step forward. My father's at 25%, but he could range from 4 to 31%. Now my aunt shows 48%, which is the top on her listing, but she could range between 18 and 48%. Now, kind of an interesting note here is if you step back to my father's, his is 4 to 31%, and he's up the upper range, about 25%. Her range is 18 to 48%, and she's at the very top of hers. It is likely we could look at this and say, they probably range between, it probably ranges closer between his high end of 31% and her low end of 18%. So 18 to 31%, both of them are probably ranging in. It's just how the DNA matched on the ethnicity estimates for them. Now I do also want to point out that Ancestry.com, and this applies to all the companies, but Ancestry.com has overlapping regions. Boundaries change and migration happens. We got to realize that. Countries aren't what we think they are. Regions aren't what we think they are in the past. That's what they are. They're the way they are today, but that's not what they were in the past. Just because you show DNA matches in a specific country or area now does not mean that your ancestors did not migrate or anything like that. If you take a look at this, and I just picked the 3 comparisons just below their top matches, which was Scotland, you have Ireland, Wales, and just basically England, and I have them listed here for this reason. If you look at Northern Ireland and Ireland, it also steps down into France, and it goes up into part of Scotland. If we looked back at Scotland, obviously it would cover this same region and Northern Ireland. So I also want to point out, in Wales, it dips into England's section here. There's a swath that says Chester, Wolverhampton, Hereford, Gloucestershire. Of course, I may be pronouncing them wrong to the way they would say them in England, but this is in the Wales region. And then when you look at in England, right, in northwest Europe, you look at Wales, and there's a swath matching in this area. Just because it says Wales for somebody doesn't mean it can't actually be in England or other parts of that area. It just happens to be the most common definition here. Now when we go to the next slide that out of there, look at my father and my aunt, or my father and his sister, same parents. 25% versus 48%, 24% versus 40%, 22 versus 8, 17 versus 4. And I want to go back into what I said before, where you had England and Wales overlapping. Some of this, it appears now in hers more strongly that it's England and Northwest Europe, where my father shows more of in Wales. And then if you look at Ireland, it's the same type of thing. In Ireland, she shows 8%. My father shows 22%. My father has 25 and 22. They're separated in almost exact quarters here in these 4 regions. Well, where she shows that it's Scotland instead of Ireland, that could be the section. If we step back into this area, you look at Northern Ireland here, that's part of Scotland as well. So when you say Ireland for my father and then you say Scotland for my aunt, actually you could be looking at the fact that it's in Northern Ireland, which is actually where we believe the McCain line migrated from. And so it's not uncommon to expect to see that, plus who he may have married, maybe from Irish, Northern Irish descent, and again showing up in that region. Now he shows the Denmark and Sweden and Norway and 4% to 8%. She doesn't show it in hers. And let's get into that topic real quick here. Recombination or mixture of the DNA takes place differently. You inherit segments from each parent. Siblings aren't 100% matches. At the chromosome level, they can receive different DNA. And so when they get that different DNA, this person shows Irish, this person shows Scottish, this person shows this person shows that. They only are about 50% match to each other. They're not going to be 100% match just because they had the same parents. So let's look at a few conclusions here. Siblings receive different results due to recombination, or as I said, mixing of the DNA. As I have stated in previous videos, estimates on ethnicity are only advanced guesses based on formulas and data each test company has available. With these guesses, you cannot definitively say I'm 48% Scottish or 22% Irish, or you could pick any ethnicity estimate area and say, well, I'm from Norway, I'm from Sweden. Well, yes, you're probably going to show those if you have done your paper trail, or when you've done your tracing of your family line using actual documentations and immigration records, actual records, and determine that your family came from a certain area. And that's when you can say, well, I'm 25% Scottish based on those. DNA helps with this, though, and that's a key point to point out here. DNA does help because these ethnicity estimates do help show evidence for you. It's another piece of evidence that your ancestors came from a certain area. Now, the second point here is siblings receive 50% of each parent. However, it is not the same 50%. Recombination or mixing of the chromosomes happens in each person in different ways. What I'm saying there is when you were formed, your DNA took a piece of this grandparent, a piece of that grandparent, a piece of this grandparent, a piece of that grandparent from your parents. So you have your paternal grandparents and you have your maternal grandparents. Now, whenever the DNA recombines, there's a set of each together, and this is an advanced topic, but nonetheless important to talk about. You could be getting the grandmother and the grandfather from each side on that segment, where your sibling could actually be getting the grandfather and the grandmother. So this person's getting 2 pieces of DNA, this person's getting 2 pieces of DNA, and they don't match at all because it's from different branches. Those things happen. You're not going to be crossing over the line of top and bottom, but you could be saying this section here is from your paternal grandfather and this one is from your maternal grandmother. So when you do that, when the DNA is recombined, you can have a variation there. Now, siblings usually have quite similar, and there's a thing called visual phasing that some of the genetic genealogists, the advanced genetic genealogists do, and it's a topic that I'm not planning on covering anyways soon, because my whole point is, as a family genealogist to family genealogists, not covering that level yet. Now, at some point in the future, I may do so, but right now I wanted to keep it to where people can understand it or ask me questions, and I can try to address those. So now let's go to the finishing of that line that I started on here. When you are when you transfer your raw DNA, or the DNA information you receive at particularly like Ancestry, to other companies like GEDmatch, Family Tree DNA, and MyHeritage, you can actually look at the chromosome level, show how you match on each chromosome. You have 23 pairs. Ethnicity estimates focus on the 22 chromosomes, not the sex chromosome. When you transfer to GEDmatch, Family Tree DNA, or MyHeritage, you can look at the chromosome levels, and you see where you match and or don't match. This is another topic for another video that I'd look to discuss once I pull a few things together on those matching and on chromosome level. Lastly, remember, when your DNA recombines, you may have admixtures that make you appear more Scottish or more Norwegian, etc., any of the regions. These can be trace results, which I covered in a different video, or indication of an area where region boundaries overlap. An important statement about that is if we step back a couple of slides, you will see that Northern Ireland and Scotland go together. Scotland also shows up in this portion of France. So you could have markers that indicate in these regions that say that trace that you're from one place or another, when in fact you're from another country. Again, boundaries happen. Same thing here in Wales. You have this swath here into England, and England has the swath into Wales. And England, obviously, even look at this, it goes into the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg. So you got the German and the French potentials here. It just matters in the sense that when you see this DNA, is don't get hung up that you're from here or you're from there. Our ancestors migrated over time, and we got to look at it as a potential area where we could be from any country. It's really, you're more likely from an area. You'll have a swath area, and I covered that again in another video, where you could be in a swath area, and you probably have an ancestor from a certain area, but it doesn't mean it's from this country or that country. It means that's the area they lived in Europe at the time. So I hope this video helped you, educate you, and I hope you consider liking, subscribing, and clicking the bell notification so that you'll receive notification when I put out new videos. And let's continue this journey together.